Hey, welcome back to Groups. I am so excited and thankful that you've chosen to continue to intentionally gauge in the midst of community. I really do believe that our lives are better when we experience them with other people. And so I am thankful that you are choosing to intentionally not only get to know other people, but to hopefully find a place where you can be known as well. And so my encouragement is that we continue to build and develop and intentionally pour into those relationships and connections. Reality is that every single one of us, including and especially myself, man, we need each other. This week we continued our series on the Sermon on the Mount, and 6 times in Matthew chapter 5, Jesus starts out by saying, "You have heard it said." And in every single one of those "you have heard it said" statements, he gives the people that were hearing on the hillside, and really to every single one of us, a concept either from the Ten Commandments or from the Levitical law that they would heard and known and understand. But then he immediately follows it up by saying, "You've heard it said this, but I tell you there's actually a different way that as followers of me you are called to live." And I think it's really important for us to understand that why, and it's where we camped for a while on Sunday. And it's this idea that I don't believe that God came to only change your behaviors, but I believe that God sent his son, that Jesus came to help change our hearts, that we're changed from the inside out, that it's not just about the behaviors that we have, but it's about being truly and honestly, completely and totally changed, and that it starts from our hearts. Proverbs chapter 4 says, "Above all else, guard your heart, for it is the wellspring of life." And so in this passage that we looked at on Sunday, Jesus is speaking to us specifically around this idea that you've heard it said, "Do not commit adultery." But I tell you that anyone who looks upon a woman with lust in his heart has already committed adultery. And by the way, just as I said on Sunday, he's not talking just specifically to guys, he is talking to all of us. And so the lust that Jesus is talking about, I think it's really important for us to understand that the connotation has something that you covet to it. And so I think a better definition than maybe the way that we always think of lust is this, that it's an obsessive desire and feeling that is ongoing and nursed, wanting to possess someone that doesn't belong to you. Man, I think about that word ongoing, and I think about that word nursed. Reality is that every single one of us can have behaviors on the outside that don't truly reflect what is taking place on the inside. We can very easily hide from other people what it is that we're doing because our actions wouldn't show what is taking place inside of our hearts. And I think sometimes we can even begin to deceive ourselves. And so Jesus says, listen, you are called to live a different way. And I think there's a reality, I talked about this, that inside of marriage, there are seasons of disappointment. There are seasons where we feel insignificant. There are even seasons where you and I can feel unloved. And sometimes when we find ourselves in the midst of that season, it is really easy for us to begin to want or to covet or to begin to dream about all of the possibilities that could be, that are outside of the boundaries of the covenant relationship that you and I already exist in. And so Jesus says, listen, I have given you a different way to live. And so the call that we have is to really understand love as not just a feeling, but love as a choice and as a commitment. And he ends the passage in kind of this really crazy way. It would have shocked the hearers that were seated on the hillside when he tells them, listen, if your right hand is causing you to sin, like cut it off. If your eye is causing you to sin, like gouge it out, get rid of it. And this would have been an incredibly crazy scenario for Jesus to live out or to suggest that they live out. To lose a limb, to lose an eye, would almost certainly mean that you are facing really challenging circumstances in your life, that you might not be able to work or be able to provide. Like, it would mean that your life was turned upside down. And was Jesus actually telling us that we need to start severing limbs or taking out, our eyes? And the answer to that is no. But I think what he is saying is that we need to act with extreme urgency, that we need to pay attention, that this really is important and it really matters. Because here's what I know, that when you are in the boundaries of a marriage relationship, when you begin to stray, that there is so much pain and heartache. That when we begin to covet, when we begin to nurse, when we begin to have an ongoing desire that is outside of our commitment, it will leave us with a drastic and horrific path in which there will be a significant amount of pain, not just for ourselves, but oftentimes for our families as well. And so Jesus calls us to live differently. And so I want to remind you, as I reminded us on Sunday, that God's grace and his love for every single one of us is real. But the call that you and I have is to really examine our hearts. And maybe there needs to be some pretty drastic changes and measures that you and I begin to take to change our patterns and our behaviors. My hope is that you guys have a fantastic discussion. Like I said, thank you for intentionally being a part of community. May God do immeasurably more. And I hope that I get a chance to see you on Sunday.